The greatest danger to the world today is not the situation in Korea, not a third world war, not the atomic bomb, although all of these dangers are of great magnitude. The greatest danger is mental ill health. I am not speaking of the illnesses which confine hundreds of thousands of persons to the state hospitals. I am speaking of the mental illnesses which afflict physically healthy individuals, and particularly those in places of high responsibility. The great danger in connection with these diseases is that they are contagious. They take on epidemic form and spread rapidly. An epidemic of the manic-depressive psychosis and of paranoia is building up in the United States today, and it can reach very dangerous proportions. The center of dissemination is in Washington. Another center is in Moscow. The diseases are not of the acute variety that require hospitalization. They are of a subclinical degree, but the personality characteristics of the disease are developed to a very high intensity. The danger is not to the individuals affected, but to the country as a whole and to the world, because the mentally sick individuals are in a position of power to inflict the results of their disordered thinking on the country and on the world, and plunge us into another world war, the result of which will be a worldwide epidemic wave of mental illness, the effects of which will be worse than defeat by any enemy. It rarely happens that a person suffers from a deficiency of one vitamin. If there is a deficiency of one, there is likely to be a deficiency of others. And the real trouble is likely not to be associated with the lack of vitamins in the diet at all, but to something more fundamental. So it is with mental disorders. It is rarely that a person suffers from just one. He usually has a mixture of all of them. Psychiatrists are well aware that any mental disease category they set up includes aspects of all others. Mental disease is a matter of degree. It is probable that everyone, at some time, perhaps for only a period of minutes, has suffered from some degree of mental derangement. There is a very wide range of mental states associated with mental illnesses. They range from conditions which are only slight variations from normal, that we would not think of associating with mental disease, to very acute situations in which the mental and physical powers deteriorate. There is a very direct connection between mind and body. Unsatisfactory conditions in the body can cause disturbed mental states, and disturbed mental states can cause physical illnesses. Persons with the manic-depressive psychosis usually die from heart conditions, and schizophrenics usually die of tuberculosis. There are many diseased conditions which are not normally called a disease. The achieving of great wealth is, I believe, the symptom of a very serious mental disorder. We do not treat our millionaires as victims of a mental disease, but they are. They are also a symbol of economic ill health. A person can acquire wealth in other forms, excess personal power, for example. We call them individuals with powerful personalities. They dominate others. We glorify them. They become leaders. No individual should dominate another. If one does, he is taking a power which does not belong to him. The fact that one individual is willing to dominate another is an indication of mental illness on the part of the person doing the dominating. He is not a leader, he is a driver, practically a slave owner. These dominators, working through mental or physical powers, should be incarcerated in a hospital the instant they show their first symptoms. Leadership and cooperation is something entirely different. This should be on an equality basis. We are placing the high values on the wrong qualities. We need a new basic philosophy. We are now facing a condition that requires something more definite than theories. We are facing a condition in which nations are suffering from mental illness, and the world is mentally ill. A great many individuals are mentally ill. As nations become ill, more and more of their citizens will become ill. Nations become ill when small groups of individuals in strategic governmental positions manifest mental illness in their thinking and in their actions. The actions of less than 1,000 mentally ill individuals in Washington can inflict mental illness of a serious degree on the great bulk of the entire population of the country. While the great majority of the people are still within the normal sane state, we can cure the Washington situation. If we fail to curb the Washington manics, the future presents a very gloomy aspect. The Washington group, from the president, his executive family, the constellation of bureaucrats, the Congress, and a host of minor executives, are suffering as a group, and in most cases as individuals, from the manic drive of the manic-depressive psychosis and the persecution grandeur complex of paranoia. There is another group in Moscow suffering from exactly the same mental disorders, with the same effects on the Russian people. Because these small groups are in strategic positions of power, they may plunge the world into World War III. the effects on us of a victory for Moscow, or the effect on Russians of a victory for us, from a purely military or economic point of view, would be of very small importance compared to the mental illness which war would inflict on the whole world. The manic phase in Washington at the present time is a direct result and part of the manic phase which brought about World War II. The manic illness still persists there. Among the people as a whole in this country, the manic phase of World War II subsided and was followed by the depressed phase. They are unsold on world wars. The manic phase, however, has been built up twice in this country within a generation, and the manics in Washington believe it could be built up again, and they are trying to put it across. If we let them do it, we are crazier than they are. Let me describe the manic phase of the manic-depressive psychosis. During periods of elation, the patient apparently reasons in his own mind as follows: "My life is blameless, my conduct praiseworthy. I have met my social and other obligations in exemplary fashion. My superiority is firmly established. My fellow men must say to me, 'Well done.' But there remains much for me to do. All I need is more room for action. I must telephone or telegraph my orders. I am destined to become the chosen leader of the people." Thus do these manics present a bluff, shameless front. As elation advances, they conduct themselves in a swaggering, boastful, and vainglorious manner. They crave opportunity for showing off. They long for an audience. They feel as blameless as a babe unborn. Nevertheless, as much as in the depressed state, the manic is dependent upon the group for his satisfaction. Without company, he is unsatisfied and ineffective. The mild forms of emotional excitement and accelerated motor activity are characterized by very simple disturbances of thinking in association with emotional exhilaration. There is very little distortion of the content of the thought. The isolated acts and idea expression of such patients as concerns a given thought do not depart much from what would be normal for them. The pathology in these cases is the entire ensemble of thinking and acting. These people get up early in the morning, their minds swarming with business enterprises or schemes for pleasure. They are bright and cheerful, often singing. They perambulate around the house, quite indifferent to the fact that they are disturbing the slumbers of other members of the family. They are impatient of delay, are minutely concerned about whatever other member of the family is doing or should do, and tend to become irritable and impatient, or even to fly into a rage if they are crossed, or if their plans are frustrated. They are given to sending telegrams and special delivery letters because the ordinary mails are too slow. These communications being very numerous and verbose, they are quite likely to start out on a shopping tour and make many unnecessary purchases. During this stage of the disorder, they lead busy lives, talking, visiting, keeping luncheon engagements, telephoning, telegraphing, and writing. Appointments are made, postponed, and cancelled. There is a tendency to give orders and then to modify or countermand them. The motor activity is sometimes almost incessant, walking from one room to another, up and down stairs, all the while manifesting great impatience with associates, subordinates, and servants. They are talkative and good-humored on the whole, unless they are thwarted or compelled to undergo delays. This stage of the disorder is characterized by irritability, impulsiveness, and egoism. The patient is elated and exhilarated and seems to be enjoying the best of health. The capacity for creative thinking and acting is impaired. The initial stage of manic elation makes its victims appear to be live wires. They tend to monopolize the conversation, are dogmatic in expressing their views. Their plans and schemes, while fairly rational, are never thoroughly thought out. They are inconsistent and changeable, intolerant of criticism, mildly sarcastic, or even rude. They do not seem to be fatigued after one of these days of activity. It should be borne in mind that in general, victims of this disorder are individuals of more than ordinary intelligence, who are usually very capable, highly efficient persons who occupy positions of authority and executive management. Among women, they are very often social leaders, club workers, and of similar type. Now let me say something about paranoia. We are interested in mostly the paranoid state of the manic-depressive psychosis. There are two types, but that can be mixed in one individual. 1. The persecution type, in which the victim finds himself in danger from imagined enemies. 2. Grandois type, which is characterized by persistent delusions of self-importance. And authority states, the delusions are permanent, and the prognosis is very unfavorable. Paranoia is not associated with other psychotic categories, is categorized not only by insidious development, but by a lasting and unshakable delusional system in association with our mental status, which is otherwise quite clear and logical, so that aside from a delusional trend, the patient's thoughts, life, and conduct are fairly normal. This condition was once called monomania. 2/3 of the cases appear in the fourth decade, 30 to 40. Suspicious, envious, and jealous individuals, most likely to suffer from this disease. They judge others by themselves. There is no cure for this condition. Extreme state is one in which an individual is always fleeing from imagined enemies, distrusting food, friends, family, suspicious that every sound is an attack aimed at him, that everyone who looks at him is a spy, prying into his affairs. His beliefs, ideas are being stolen. Suspicion is frequently directed at lodges and religions. The current form is directed at a political ideology, both in Russia and in this country. In this country, the paranoics among the individuals of executive, legislative, and administrative responsibility see communists as the hidden enemy. In Russia, the communists see the capitalists as their devils. In World War I, we made Kaiser Wilhelm the devil from whom we were in danger. In World War II, Hitler and his Nazis were the devil whom we were taught to fear. In the planned World War III, Stalin and his communists are the devil. The formula is the same. The first two wars, proclaimed as a means of bringing peace to the world, were totally unsuccessful. A third war would be equally unsuccessful. The formula is definitely wrong. Only a mentally sick population in the United States could permit its government to try that formula again. All of you are old enough to remember how we were aroused to a mighty resentment by Kaiser Wilhelm's remark that me und Gott were united to bring Germany cultural ideas to the world. Just last night, President Truman, in addressing a military drive group in Washington, declared, "We are doing what God intended us to accomplish, to take the leadership to ensure peace in the world." It would be very interesting to know just when and how Mr. Truman learned that God intended us to do that. I would like to know the circumstances of the revelation. I would like to know just what God told Mr. Truman. The truth is, God did not tell Mr. Truman anything. Mr. Truman has undertaken the task of speaking for God. That act on the part of Mr. Truman is just as pathological as those that are spoken by many an individual incarcerated in a state hospital. That is the grandeur, the Messiah complex in Mr. Truman, the paranoid delusion of self-importance. Mr. Truman is, probably, not a bit more pathological than the host of other manics with which he is surrounded, all suffering from the Red Devil persecution complex intensified by their manic psychosis. We have fought 2 wars to give the people of the world the right to self-determination in choosing their type of government, and now we are coldly projecting a war against Russia because a group in Washington has decided that they don't like the government in Russia and are going to kick it out. How does that fit into the picture of American ideals? I don't like communism. It is infantile, impractical, and does not provide the personal liberty that I demand. I don't think it is going to last long in Russia. Even if everyone in this country agreed with me in my antagonism to communism, that would still not give us the right to make war on Russia to drive out the communists. We can defeat communism in other ways. Mr. Truman has stated repeatedly that he made many efforts to restore peace, but every one of them was a warlike move. There is a saying that I learned as a child, and which I keep constantly in my mind. If you want to have a friend, be a friend. That advice works. We would get nowhere by discussing the details of the existing situation. What we will have to adopt is the technique of the wise policeman. A group of young fellows assemble to play a game. A friendly discussion leads to a disagreement on some point. The discussion gets warm, too warm. The young fellows start shaking their fists and taking off their coats to prepare for battle. The policeman decides the situation has gone far enough. He wades into the group. "Break it up, fellow. Break it up and go home." He does not bother to find out who is wrong and who is right. He just breaks it up, scatters the group. That is what must be done to the Washington group. Have you noticed how many vacations Mr. Truman takes? I wonder if his doctor is playing the part of the wise cop. The best thing that could happen to the country would be to have all the manic group in Washington take a 5-year vacation, voluntary or request. That includes the Taft kind as well as the Truman kind. All of the Deweys throughout the country should be included. There is a better approach to our problems. God does not reveal himself to politicians and tell them to go to war. He does, however, reveal himself through his works. It is the task of science to learn about God through his works. This is being done, and the laws of science can be accepted as our closest approach to the laws of God. With this thought in mind, I have drawn up a decalogue. The Decalogue of Principles for Peace and Progress. 1. I live in a universe governed entirely by the laws of God, which are the laws of nature and the laws of science, that are as unchanging as the nature of God himself. These can be depended upon to operate in the same way at all times. They apply to all men and supply me with the basis for planning and living my life. They provide the pattern for peace and progress for all men, individually and collectively. 2. I will think and act in accordance with these laws and will speak only that which is true. 3. Truth can be attained within the range of our activities and is always in harmony with the laws of God. 4. There is adequate accommodation in this world to permit all men to live on a high level of comfort and luxury, if all make reasonable contributions to production and our resources are applied for human welfare, and if none is wasted in strife, for strife is impoverishing all men. 5. I am born to full possession of the entire universe and all it contains, including the whole earth and all the individuals in this world. The heavens are mine, and no spot on the earth is foreign territory to me. This can be truthfully spoken by all men. 6. The welfare of all men is my personal responsibility. For the task of administering the earth and the affairs of the human race, I have available the cooperative service of all men. This is true of all men. This principle operates to the end that all men achieve individual freedom to live their lives in the knowledge that they are safe from ill will and selfish imposition. 7. The world of thought is the mold into which actions are cast. I will well think of all men. Whenever and wherever I find men unable to reciprocate, men suffering from mortal or physical illnesses that prevent them from acting in accordance with the laws of God, I will render generous aid until they are able to achieve this harmony. 8. I will act only on the fullest possible knowledge of truth. I will reserve judgment until I know the adequate truth. I will use no propaganda words and no intemperate phrases, because they impair my judgment and interfere with the process of clear thinking. 9. I will permit no man to influence me to hate, fear, or mistrust any man or community of men. If any person manifests hatred, fear, or mistrust, I will treat him as a person mentally or physically ill, and will relieve him of all responsibilities until he has recovered his normal state of body and mind. 10. I will have faith that there are powers beyond me that are available for promoting all activities directed toward peace and progress, for the web begun God sends thread.